even in like the really tragic traumas that I've experienced in my life, I can look back at those and find the reasons in them and find the beauty in them, as I'm sure you can.
Welcome, bienvenue, bonjour to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. For women who desire to awaken their heartfelt desires, trust themselves fully, and connect with their soul's purpose through beauty. On y va. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. This is Tara Marino, and do I have a gorgeous guest for you today? This woman came across my path, Gabrielle Stone, and when I started researching her, there were a few things that really stood out to me that I'll talk to you about during the interview. But to set the pace as we move into this together, this woman is fierce and open. Her journal is called Fuck Off, I'm Healing. I absolutely love it. I share the beginning of her story here as we open up into the interview. And I thought what would be really beautiful is to share with you one of the top quotes from her book. So let me pull it up here. One of the top quotes from her book on Amazon that was screenshotted the most through Kindle says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Even on the down days, choose." As you listen to this episode, I invite you to feel into that space of choice for yourself. What is it that is presenting itself to you in your life right now where you are being offered the opportunity to choose? Enjoy this interview. Make sure to find us on YouTube. Leave the comments. We are over there celebrating with you. You can tag us on social, all the places. Let us know how this episode is supporting you. And thank you so much for being a woman who is committed to living her beautiful soul-led life. Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. So there are a couple of different connections that I look for when I interview someone on the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. And there's a nuance. Some of the interviews it's really deep and spiritual, and it rides on a frequency. And some of the interviews are not only deep and spiritual, but they're fun and they're edgy. And the women are in this energy of like, let's fucking go all in. So before I introduce you to this woman, I want to share something that I love about her so much, just to give you a little bit of an idea of this beautiful soul. So she has a gorgeous book, which we're going to talk about today. But I want you to hear this. I want you to hear this background. A year and a half into our marriage, I found out my husband had been having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months. I filed for divorce and left. 2 weeks later, I met a man, and we fell madly in love. It was a fairy tale romance for a month and a half, and he convinced me to join him on a romantic month-long vacation in Italy. 48 hours before we were supposed to get on a plane, he told me he needed to go by himself. I was devastated. So I had a decision to make, either stay home and be heartbroken or go travel Europe for a month by myself. And staying home heartbroken? Fuck that. What does a woman do when her life has fallen apart, her heart has been ripped out, and stepped on twice in 2 months? She goes on a wild adventure, makes some bad decisions, and does a shitload of soul searching, but most importantly, she finds out how to love herself. Could we even get a better introduction? Welcome to the podcast, Gabrielle Stone.
Thank you. I'm
welcome.
so happy to be here for the spiritual conversation that has some edge and some fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's just when I landed on it, I want everyone else to also, we'll talk about where everyone can find you and all that good stuff, but just even landing on your Instagram, right? Fuck Off, I'm Healing. Mm-hmm. This is the book, right? This is the book currently. Fuck Off, I'm Healing.
Yeah. So
right?
I originally, when I went through pretty much the synopsis that you just gave, I went on my Europe trip and I wrote my first book, which was Eat, Pray, FML. That book blew up and started doing wildly well. And everybody was like, okay, cool. What the fuck happened after Europe? Then came the sequel, which is the 2 years after I came back from Europe, which is called The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. And then I realized after I started my podcast, FML Talk, that my community really wanted like a step-by-step way of how to start their own healing journey. And that was when I released the journal, which is Fuck Off, I'm Healing, which is kind of me holding your hand through how to uncover and work through all the trauma and bullshit that life throws at us.
So we have a trilogy really here, right?
Yeah.
The you experiencing the journey, you writing through it, and then you supporting other women and writing through it. And I know you and I had a gorgeous conversation on your podcast as well. And this is something you and I both really align with. It's like when we live into what we're teaching, like there's no other way.
Yeah. And really like looking for the reasons in life and the pain that we go through and experience, and finding why those happened so that they don't feel like just things that the world decided to throw at us. When you can find the reasons in those, I feel like that's when you're really able to find some peace around all the shit that we go through.
Yeah. So in this excerpt that I read from this book, where you had two really significant heartbreaks in a matter of 2 months, what for you, when you reflected back on that, what was the reason? What was the seed? What was the gift that you allowed yourself to receive from it?
Yeah. So for me, I had always been dealing with the fear of abandonment since I was a little girl. I found my father on the floor dead of a heart attack when I was 6 years old, which was obviously very traumatic for a little girl to deal with. And from that moment, I developed a subconscious belief of when I love someone, they die. And on the surface, that comes out as when I love someone, they leave. So I was walking around with this really deep subconscious fear my entire life. It played out again when I was 18 and I lost my high school sweetheart in a car accident. Same wound ripped wide open. When I love someone, they die. When I love someone, they leave. So then I subconsciously attracted my ex-husband, who would go on to leave me in the form of infidelity and disrespecting my body and our vows and everything about our marriage. And then I attracted the man after, who in the book's name is Javier, who quite literally abandoned me right before I was getting on a plane to a trip that he invited me on. So the universe this whole time was like screaming at me, being like, Gabrielle, hello, can we wake up and see like the pattern here? And until I decided I was going to go on this trip alone, I didn't really get it. But it became so clear to me in that moment, like, oh, of course I have to go on this trip by myself and be by myself across the entire world, because I have to learn how to be alone. And I have to learn how to not have this abandonment fear anymore.
I mean, so what you're saying is so potent, and I know so many women can relate. And that wisdom, that intelligence that you look back on, that you're like, well, of course, right? This is what I'm called to grow through. This is a part of, I would maybe say, spiritual curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is part of what I meant to heal in this lifetime. And yet that leap of, from the place of like, which we all go through, that I'm going to say victim, I'm not saying you're saying that, but just when I say that, I'm saying that place of feeling like, why are these things happening in my life? Why am I being punished? Versus this is really for me and this is supporting me in a deeper reflection of how I can love myself no matter who's here or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get messages all the time from people being like, why do I keep attracting narcissists? Why do I keep attracting, why do I keep getting with people that are cheating on me? And I want to be clear when I say this, because sometimes it's triggering for people to hear. You never deserve any of this. But if there is a pattern in your life, like there was in mine that I just like illustrated, you are attracting that in some way so that you can heal that part of yourself. So until we take accountability and responsibility for the fact that, okay, there's something within me that needs to be healed and fixed and get into alignment before I can attract something different than this shitty pattern that keeps repeating itself, until we've really gotten into what that is, we're not going to attract the stuff that we're wanting and desiring. We're going to keep in this pattern until we wake up and realize what it is in us that's attracting that we need to heal.
I love that you're saying it. And I also love that you highlighted that nuance, because it's so easy for us all to go into, well, okay, then it's my fault and
Right.
I'm doing it. And just move into more places of guilt and judgment
Mm-hmm.
versus the powering place that you're talking about, which is like, no, there's something in me. There's some energetic loop, connection, whatever we want to call it, whatever that I am available for.
Mm-hmm.
And until I heal that, I'm going to continue to be available for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really about looking at your life as a detective and being like, okay, what is this pattern trying to tell me? What are the things happening to me? What's the reason? Like, I am a walking blueprint of everything happens for a reason, not in the toxic positivity way of like, yeah, sure, it all happens for a reason and sunshine and rainbows. No, but like, even in like the really tragic traumas that I've experienced in my life, I can look back at those and find the reasons in them and find the beauty in them, as I'm sure you can. We talked about that when I interviewed you.
Yeah.
Like, there's reasons, whether or not you can see it when you're in it, or if you need a little bit of perspective and hindsight, there are reasons of why you went through something, how they built you into the person that you are today, the lessons that you learned, but you have to be willing to see them, find them, and receive them.
Yeah. So when someone's in that pain of why do I keep attracting this thing? Why do I keep on having this experience? And you share with them that awareness. There's something in you, there's some energetic attraction, loop, reason, opportunity for healing. Then where do you invite them to go with it? Like, if they're open to having the awareness and you're saying being a detective in your life,
Mm-hmm.
where do you support them to go for that next piece of healing? If they're really, I imagine they've got to be really ready, because
Yeah.
it isn't this like, oh, don't worry, you had the awareness, you flip the switch, you're good, like, get on with it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So if they're really present and ready, I send them towards the journal, because that's really like, there's prompts and questions in that journal that are going to make you look at shit in your life that you have been shying away from, or that you've never, like, it's never been called to your awareness to dive into,
Yeah.
and allow you to really break down some of the things that you've gone through or have happened in your life that might have built up and led to this thing that you're now trying to deal with. If I get the sense that they're not super ready to dive in that deep, that's when my first book, Eat, Pray, FML, is a really great starting point, because it reads like a Netflix show. Like, you feel like you're sitting down drinking a bottle of wine with me, and like, we're traveling around Europe and I'm telling you a crazy story. But because it's written in that fun way, you don't really realize how much you're going to heal throughout it while you're watching me work through my own stuff. So I have this technique that I write about in both the books, but it obviously started in the first one, and it's called the thought onion. And it's the way that I began on my trip to break down the thoughts and reactions that I was having, so that I could figure out where they were stemming from, to then heal those and have different thoughts and reactions in the future. So the way you look at it is like an onion. And it's so funny. I always said I was going to change the name when I was writing my book in Europe, and then it just stuck, and here we are. But you look at it like an onion. The first layer is the superficial thought, and that's your kind of knee-jerk reaction, like what you have right in the moment before your brain can really process how you're feeling. And you take a step back, and underneath that is the authentic thought. And that is really the pain or the ouch spot that caused that superficial reaction in the first place. So like, what am I really feeling that caused me to have this reaction? And then you take a step back, and underneath that is the subconscious thought. And that's where the real meat and potatoes is. When you can get to the subconscious thought, which is usually a long-stemming subconscious belief or a trauma or something you've been carrying for a really long time, then you can kind of connect, oh, this is what is causing me to have these reactions and these thoughts. How can I address this root problem to change my reactions and thoughts in the future?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this. And isn't it funny that we come up with a name and we're like, this is just temporary, and then it completely sticks. Like,
totally.
this is what it was meant to be.
Yes.
This is what it was meant to be. So we have the superficial thought, we have the authentic thought, and then we have the subconscious thought.
Yeah.
So in what you're saying, I mean, so many women, and I've had this experience, I know you have too, like the fear of even going beyond the superficial thought
Mm-hmm.
of what, because there's a knowing inside of us, right? There's something that's like, we can feel it. We're like, I know there's something here that I haven't wanted to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So the courage to look at it. And then the subconscious piece inside, I mean, that just even those 3 steps are so healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times there's nothing to necessarily do when you get to the subconscious thought. It's just the awareness and realizing like, oh, this is a thing for me. A lot of times that
Yeah.
awareness is enough to like bring it to the surface. And sometimes it's something that's like, oh shit, I need to do some work around this. And whether that looks like journaling or therapy or whatever it is that like suits you, sometimes it's a deeper dive if it's a more prominent thing that's showing up time and time again. But a lot of times when people read the book, they pick it up for like entertainment purposes, which I love because it is that, but they don't realize it's going to be a whole ass self-help like healing journey because they're watching
I love
me
that.
go through all of this stuff and like do all these thought onions myself. And they're like, oh, I resonate with that.
I love that so much. And honestly, Gabrielle, I feel like this is the next step of healing. Like my book is very similar in the way it's actually a fiction book, but it's written with such magicalism and magical realism and all of that, that's the intention.
Right.
Like there's a healing journey that takes place beyond what we're so used to, which is self-help, struggle. Let me fix it.
Yeah.
Let me figure it out. I really believe like that's the cutting edge of healing for us, to just really allow ourselves to be immersed in a state of healing without trying.
Well, and also like, especially since becoming a mom, like I'm exhausted. And like at the end of the day, I do not want to pick up a book that's like, here's what we're going to do to heal. Come with me on this journey. I'm like, no, dude, I want to go to Europe. I want to have a glass of wine. I want to fucking be taken out of my like shitty like mood that I'm in. And then if I can get some really deep healing in lieu of that, it's like having a good mixology cocktail. I don't want to taste the gin in it. I just want to get a fun buzz and have a good time.
Oh my God. You're the best. You're the best. Like seriously, I honestly feel like it is the cutting edge of healing. I feel like it's what every woman not only wants, but it is the way, it is the opening, because we get so used to like literally trying so hard.
Yeah.
You know, what you're saying too about the thought onion, another thing that I wanted to bring forward, I imagine, let me know, that when you go through this process, does it also potentially like almost like a domino effect? Like, oh my gosh, this is the same way that I was feeling about that and about that and about that. Like you can just start to see the vein of, oh my gosh, there is a foundational component that I didn't allow myself to recognize.
100%. And like for me, that perfect example is the abandonment through line. Like you can look at my life as a blueprint and it's like, oh, of course she was attracting these people. Of course this trip was what changed her life, because she then had to go rectify and like deal with being by herself and being alone and learn how to love herself. It all made so much sense. Like it was hard to argue the principles behind it.
And when it did start to make sense to you, when you started to see the through line, did you feel a relief? Did you all of a sudden feel like there's nothing wrong with me? Like, what was that, you know, that opportunity to be like, okay, this doesn't have to happen anymore. I've recognized it. I see it. I was seeing that I was a match for this in some way. What was that next? Like, and now I no longer need it.
Yeah, it was freeing. It was scary because it was something that had been with me my entire life. And it was a weird comfort in that. And it was life-changing. Like I went on that trip and so much took place for my healing. And I came back like a completely different woman in all of the best ways. But that didn't mean like I came back and everything was fixed. I came back to my mom's house that I had moved into before I left, because that's where you go when you're 28 and you get divorced. And it was like I stepped off the carousel and everything stopped. And it was like, oh, yeah, you're going through a divorce, you're back at your mom's house, you're heartbroken, welcome home. And I had to deal with that. So I feel like the message in me saying all this right now is that healing is not linear. There are days that you feel like you've taken 10 steps forward and days that you feel like you ran a mile backwards. And all of that is okay and valid. The biggest thing that you can do in life in general, even if you're not on a healing journey, is meet yourself wherever you actually are every single day and honor that.
Mm, mm, so good. So, so good. I want to highlight something that you said because I feel like whether it's around love, around money, around health, or like whatever we're growing into next. And when we see that, what you're talking about, this isolation of a pattern, a hurt, a heartbreak, an opportunity. You said it was scary to let it go because you were so used to it. And I think this is something that we all get to really recognize and honor that's not talked about enough. Because the mind is like, now that you know, just like freaking get on with it. You know you don't want the thing, just move on. But it does become this identity that we have an intimate relationship to, whether we like it or don't like the thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really beautiful thing to mention and for us to give ourselves grace.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same as looking at it like a toxic relationship. Everyone around you sees that it's bad for you. You will eventually be like, shit, yeah, this is bad for me. But we're still searching for that hit, that dopamine hit. It's something you're addicted to. It's something you're used to. It's something that has become a part of your spiritual DNA. And you have to release that and cleanse yourself of it before you can start feeling comfortable without something that you've had as a constant for so many years.
And do you suggest having an idea of what you want to replace it with or just allowing the space inside?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say allowing the space, because if you're replacing it with something, it's the same thing as jumping from relationship to relationship. You're not allowing the space and the emptiness that is now there to bring you what it has to offer if you're immediately filling it up with something again.
So good.
That was a really good question.
Like as a collective consciousness, we're afraid of space.
Oh, yeah.
We're afraid of the emptiness. There's just this natural default to like, what do I freaking fill it with? Because at least then there's a preparation. There's like, okay, now I'm not alone.
Yeah.
In whatever context, right? Alone in relationship, alone in love, alone in life, with money, all of it.
100%. And when I went on that trip solo, you don't realize how often we're not alone. Not just like with people, but like how often are you just alone in your room, but you're on Netflix and then you're scrolling on TikTok. And like there's all these things. You're not really by yourself. So it's like, that's one thing that was such a big gift to me. Solo travel forced me to re-meet myself in an entirely different way because I didn't have the people and the comfort and the safety nets around me. I think everyone should try and do a solo trip once in their life. It is life-changing and you will surprise yourself in so many beautiful ways. You don't have to go on a month-long trip to Europe. You can go on a weekend away to a cute Airbnb. You can go camping. You can go like just take time to really be by yourself and sit with yourself. I think it's so important.
What you're saying is actually monumental. I feel like, especially for women, when we're in relationships, when we're mothers, when we have these roles, and when we allow ourselves to go away solo, we don't recognize how much we are responding to what would that person like? What would that person like? Oh, is this person going to prefer this? And unconsciously, like creating an environment that we think is going to make everyone else happy, satisfied.
Yeah. Since I became a mom, I've noticed more so now, and my son's only 8 months, so it's new. But even when I do have time scheduled to be by myself, I have this weird guilt of like, well, I should be doing something. I should be working. I should be like, what's on my checklist that I can get done? As opposed to like, what if you just want to take a bath and watch a show? Like that should be fine. But we have these like ideas ingrained in us that it has to, if we're taking time for ourselves, it has to be worth it. And it just like doesn't need to be anything. Sometimes it can just be you being bored and enjoying that.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yeah. Like the bath in the show is actually worth it.
Yeah.
The nap is worth it. The doing nothing is actually worth it. I think what you're bringing forward is so important. Like, let's reevaluate and reframe and redefine what does worth it mean? Worth it to who?
Right. Right. Yes.
Whose standards? Whose idea? Like, you know?
Yeah. And more often than not, it's the shit that we've built up in our own head, and nobody else is trying to hold us to those standards.
My son said the other day, he's in a process right now, a pretty intense process for interviews and things like that. And he said, Mom, I just realized I'm really hard on myself. He's about to turn 18. And I'm like, welcome to the world.
Yeah. Welcome to adulthood.
You know, it's so true. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's like, what would anything else that's on your heart that you would be like, you've been through so much. So much. I mean, a 6-year-old girl, 6-year-old little girl having this experience. Then in high school, 18 years old, I watched a girlfriend go through that. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I especially feel like with that first love in high school, our hearts are so open. They are, we don't have this context of like, you might have had a little more because of what you went through when you were 6, but in general, I think this high school girl's heart is like,
totally.
Right? So that intensity. And then with these 2 other relationships. So given where you are in your life now and all of the experience you've had, and now you have this beautiful 8-month-old baby boy. Oh my gosh. He's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Saw him. Like, what precipice are you standing on now? What do you want to share from your heart space?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I have wrestled a lot with wanting to know what's next. I deal with not being the most patient person, whether that's career or whatever area of my life. And I have had to, since having my son, revisit some fears about losing people. It's very divinely appropriate how my life and relationship has ended up looking. My husband is 15 years older than me, which of course triggers me into dad's gonna die. And he has a now beautiful 11-year-old little girl, my stepdaughter. But when I came into his life, she was 6. So it was like the exact makeup of what I had gone through when I was little. And I have had to now wrestle through the intrusive thoughts of I'm repeating the same steps my mom did, and I'm going to be a single mom, and and fears about everybody dying. It's been really interesting how that has come so much to the forefront. And this, I'm so thankful for my Europe trip, because this is where I started to heal the abandonment stuff, which is obviously what's being triggered with all of these thoughts I'm talking about. Is I went on that trip and I realized that I'm never truly abandoned because I will never abandon myself. And I'm sure you can resonate with this based on what you've been through in your life. The shit that we have made it through and lived through, at some point you get to a point where you're like, yeah, he could die and this could happen and it would be fucking awful, and I would still at some point be okay.
Yeah.
And that is the gift. Being able to know that, and then staying on top of your thoughts to teach your brain it doesn't have to be that way. And we can go and live life to the fullest and be happy and give all the love and feel all the things and feel safe in doing that, because you know that you'll always be okay.
Oh my gosh, Gabrielle, seriously, it's like such a nuance what you're saying, because when you've had the intensity of the experiences that you have, that I have, that so many of us have had, really all of us have had something. There's no longer the naive thought that's like, oh, that will never happen to me. Like this stuff happens. It does happen. So then the natural thought process that can go to, what if it happens again, or if this, like, because you've already had something happen, you know, these things can happen in life.
Yeah.
And then that crossover to like, okay, if it does, I'll be okay no matter what.
Yeah.
And yet with that, not closing our hearts to love in the process.
Yeah.
Not trying to protect or prepare just in case that does. And I think this is it.
Yeah.
You know, this is the fullness of healing,
Mm-hmm.
being able to live in that and reside in that space of openness, knowing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a potent place to be.
And not to get too woo-woo on everybody, but I wholeheartedly believe that we are up there in the spirit realm, and we have chosen this life. We have chosen the people we are going to intersect with. We have chosen the experiences we're going to have. There was a really interesting video that I watched that I talked about on my podcast a few weeks back that was basically, they did a study at one of the colleges on like 70,000 people they did past life regressions on, and everyone explained the process of the afterlife the exact same way in different words. So if you really truly believe that, then you have to believe that my dad, you know, I knew I was coming down to that, to learn that lesson. Like, I am here in this life, this cycle, to heal my abandonment shit. No matter what lifetime that came from, I was like, this is the lesson I'm going to learn. I'm picking these parents because I know this is going to happen. Send me this asshole and this guy. Like, you have to be able to really commit to that. And for me, I found a lot of peace in that.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a medium recently, and she's a teacher also, and one of her students had just passed. There were two of them in the car. One of them survived and one didn't. And she finally was able to connect with this student. And she was like, why? You're 15. Like, why did this happen? And she literally said to her, because my time here and the lessons I came to learn here were done. And it was time for me to go back. And I was so much more useful on this side. And I'm so happy being back here now. And you just have to, as hard as it is for our human brains to wrap around that and be like, but it sucks and grief and ow, and it's not fair and fuck you. You have to find some peace in that and know that we are here for a blip on the radar. And I so wholeheartedly believe that we go back and reconnect with all of those people again.
I'm so with you 100%, 100%. And it's like this, when you commit to that, when you believe that, when you trust on that, you really do live differently.
Mm-hmm.
You really do see through a different lens. It's not that we're not available for the human experience, because that's fruitful, that's valuable. We're here for that. But integrating that in what you're saying, there is such a trust to like even thank all the assholes.
Right.
Like knowing we've had some sort of spiritual contract. Thank you for fulfilling yours. It's now my opportunity to receive whatever gift.
Yep.
And being able to say to the people that we have hurt or played the asshole role, you're welcome and sorry. Yes. And I love you. And from the highest context, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
But here we are together. And not only like we'll meet them again, but it's like they're still, I really believe they're still here.
Yeah.
Like it's this parallel, like you were just saying with the story of the medium and her student. It's like there's still communication happening.
Oh,
if we're
sure.
open to it.
Yeah.
You know, the guidance, the love, the intimacy can be even more intense.
Yeah.
When there isn't, you know, the physical barrier.
Yeah.
on both sides, you know?
I'm with you. I agree with you. Again, it doesn't mean that it makes it easy for our human brains and hearts to process or get through, but it does give a little bit of peace in the things that happen, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no shortcut. Like, we're not saying, oh, don't worry about it. Just you'll, like, you know, there's no shortcut to it. And yet there is a piece available in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So where can everybody inside of Elegant Femme go to fall even more in love with you?
Oh.
The journal's available on Amazon, right? Yes. Tell us all the things.
The journal's available on Amazon. You can also get it signed by me as well as the books on my website, which is eatprayfml.com. You can get the first book, the second book, both on Amazon. If you search Eat, Pray, FML, they'll both come up. And then my podcast is FML Talk. It airs every Wednesday. I had an amazing conversation with you that I can't wait for people to hear. And we really just like go into healing and all the things with, you know, some F-bombs and a bunch of the fun random talk as well.
Yeah, I love that about you. And I mean, I really meant that from the beginning. There's, you know, to go into the spirituality and go into the edge of the humanness, I think is really a relief, and it's really welcomed, and it really just allows us to let go of these concepts and pretexts of, I have to compartmentalize. I'm either good or I'm, you know, it's just, can we just have a conversation, like a real one, and not worry about anything else? So I really appreciate and love that about you. And I do ask this question often, and I'd love to ask you, especially with what you said. So, and we'll put everything in the show notes, your Instagram, which you have a gorgeous following, and your realness. I love it so much. I want everyone to go follow you and get the books, get all the things. So this place inside of you where you said, which I think so many of us can relate to, like you're always on to the next thing, right? That question we all have, like, what's next? And then that beautiful opportunity to not feel pressure about what's next because I have to figure it out, but the trust to consider what the next version might look like. So without any pressure or obligation or any old energy of force, is there like anything inside of you where you're like, oh, this version of my beautiful soul-led life is what I'd love to live into? Is there something that is getting you excited, that's full of desire, energy, and no obligation?
Yes. It's not necessarily something I can talk about yet, but it's a big next step for my work, and in tandem knowing that I can successfully be a great mom at the same time, and going and having that experience intertwined is what I'm really looking forward to most.
I don't know why. I'm just totally getting the hit, like Netflix special, some sort of TV thing. So don't say anything. Don't comment. I know but
we'll
whether
see.
It's now or later.
We'll see.
You're a force.
Thank you, my friend.
And I know that. I understand that integration. Like, can I be an amazing mom and a kick-ass successful? In my experience, now that I have an almost 18-year-old and almost 21-year-old, the thing that supported me so much inside of that conversation for me was the awareness that allowing myself to be a kick-ass businesswoman made me a better mom.
Yeah.
And allowing myself to be the mom I desire to be made me an even better businesswoman.
Yeah.
It, like, you know, the fruit, the love, it's not balance the way that we have been taught balance. It's this all in wherever all in is required.
Yeah.
And it's so available to us, you know?
Yep, absolutely. I think that's such a good reminder for anyone who is venturing or getting ready to venture into motherhood. And, you know, there doesn't need to be a fear around it. You figure it out. And so much of my work, I feel now, has become so much deeper and more important since I've become a mom. So it's only enriched it in very beautiful ways.
It takes on a different lens, doesn't it?
Yeah. You also stop taking shit from people, you know? You're like, look, I got shit to do, so fucking take it or leave it, and like let me know so I can move on.
Completely. You're like, hold on, my priorities just got real clear.
Yeah.
There is no room for this.
Yeah.
Completely. I want to thank you for everything you've birthed into the world, your books and your gorgeous son and your message and your beauty, everything that you've created with your 3 books. Having just finished my first book, holy hell, what a cathartic experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Congratulations.
respect and admiration to you. A lot of respect and admiration to you
Thank
for going
you.
through that process. And just thank you for who you are in the world. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure and honor to know you, and I'm completely cheering you on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that and receive that more than you know. And I'm glad to know you, and thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So everyone go check out Gabrielle's book, get her journal. I mean, really, like this, I want to make sure that I say it right, because every time I look at it, I smile. Fuck off, I'm healing. I mean, is this the best? How many of us just want to say that? Like, let's get the priorities straight.
I love
right?
it.
So good. So good. Thanks so much, Gabrielle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Merci for listening to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. I would love if this message served you, that you support it and share it with other women who might benefit from really having their lives in balance with their femme types. And if you can leave a comment, do a review. I love reading every single one of them. And I would adore if you could take a snapshot of yourself wherever you listen to this episode and post it on social media. My Instagram is elegantfemme1, and I'd love to see you, share you, and just celebrate with you as you are moving into creating, experiencing, and claiming your own beautiful soul-led life.